Hot Chile is not only advancing one of the major copper projects, but also is creating a water company to supply to the large mining projects in the region. With upcoming catalysts, it is one of the projects to follow closely. Welcome, mining lovers. This is Charlano de Minas, the Spanish podcast dedicated to mining investment. Now, in English. Do you want to learn? Subscribe. Do you want more content in English? Leave us a comment. The episode is about to start. Welcome to Charlando de Minas, the only Spanish podcast dedicated to mining investment and commodities. Today in English, you are hearing now a translation, dubbing of the interview, original in Spanish, to Jose Ignacio Silva, Executive Vice President of Hot Chile Limited. If you are looking for the original interview, if you're looking for the Spanish interview, have a look on the channel and you will find it. Hot Chile Limited is a company which is developing one of the most significant copper projects in South America, located in Costa Fuego, Chile. Jose Ignacio joined us a year ago to share Hot Chile's story, how the company survived the last copper bear market, and how they have been steadily building one of the most advanced copper projects on the continent. In this episode, we want to catch up and talk about the company's latest progress, the many technical milestones they have achieved, and what's come next as they face a new phase on the copper market. If you haven't seen our previous conversation, which serves as the introduction of the company, you will find the link of the video description. Still, today's will cover all the key developments and the current status in detail. Welcome back, Jose Ignacio. It's a pleasure to have you with us again. How are you?
Hello, Amadeo. Thank you very much for being here again. Always a pleasure to be speaking about mining investment, which is very much appreciated to have a channel in our own language. It is very much appreciated to have a channel in Spanish about these topics that are always more reserved for the more Anglo-Saxon language. I am very happy to be here and to be able to report on the progress of our Costa Fuego project, which has been a year of extraordinary work, of a lot of effort, and which has brought us to a time that has been very transformational for the company, for our company.
As always, part of our process when we speak with company is to follow up over the course of a year. And we have been able to track all your progress over the last 12 months. We have seen the evolution of the project, which recently reached out an important milestone with the release of your pre-feasibility study, the PFS. So maybe let's start here. In March, you published the PFS, and I would like to hand it over to you. What would you like to highlight as the key takeaways from this study, and what's changed compared to previous preliminary assessment?
Well, now let's begin with the first thing. What is a PFS, a pre-feasibility study? First of all, a pre-feasibility study is an advanced engineering study that takes the risk out of the mining project. So a mining project should be seen, for those who do not know about this, as a kind of pyramid that is moving towards the very top, representing the base, the beginning of the project, where the risk is the greatest. At the beginning, the risk of the mining project is 100%. It is completely pure risk. You are exploring without having much idea of what is there. It is 100% risk. Maybe you have some traces, you have ideas, you want something to exist, but the truth is that at the beginning it is 100% risk. It is very difficult. In general, it is very easy to lose the money. We calculate that for each mining project, we estimate that less than 1% chance of success in a type of project as a greenfield project. Even with studies, with good professionals, it is very difficult. There is part studying the land, part surveying, doing surface mapping and advancing until obviously it advances much further, does drilling. It finds a resource that is already much more than millions of dollars spent and with a lot of difficulty. Then you begin to talk with the communities, with the engineers, and this becomes real, and you arrive at a study or a preliminary economic analysis, which is known as PA, an analysis which is our first stage, which we did a couple of years ago, and that is what you initially referred to. With a level of risk that you say has more or less 50%. You say, look, here at the loss, you can move forward because there is something that is going well, but there is still a lot of risk. But nevertheless, there is an idea of a project. By that time, the level of risk is high, but we have launched the first lines of the project, and this can be with these bases that we believe can be reasonable to think about a mining project. It is still very preliminary when one makes a preliminary economic study, as it is called, okay? That is a study or a PIA. The next step, the one we recently completed in March, is considerably much more complex and demanding, involving a significant investment of financial resources, which is obviously based already on an economic reserve, on a large number of engineering studies with many engineers from all the different branches, with engineering, hydrogeology, geotechnical and environmental studies, that is to say, drowned with all the branches that involved. Making a mine with all that implies, the feasibility, the reality of being able to make a mine. You cannot mine where there is a sacred forest, it's against the rules. You just cannot mine where crosses a river that is pristine. You cannot mine where there is a living community. There are 1,000 elements that can prevent you from building a mine, and all these elements have to be removed bit by bit, and that is what one says is that we are taking the risk out of the project. Where am I going to bring the pipelines and the services? Because a mine doesn't exist without water. A mine doesn't exist without electricity. A mine doesn't exist without a process that allows that very small but sufficient concentration of mineral found in the earth to be transported to a plant to concentrate it and thus extract a concentrate that can be exported through a port. So that very difficult process requires you to eliminate risk, and you ask yourself, why? So that one day I can make a good decision. And you're going to go to the market for a lot of money. In this case, for example, we are saying that Costa Fuego's capex is going to cost more than $1 trillion. That is more than $1 billion. That is a huge amount of money that you have to borrow from banks and shareholders. So what you're doing is taking the risk out of the project so that in the next stage, in the next level, the project has even less risk. The pre-feasibility stage, which we have just finished already, this suggests that the risk of the project is already much lower. The current project risk stands at 15%, meaning the safety level is around 85 to 80%. Consequently, the project is sharpening its focus. We are sharpening the pencil. The project has much less risk. We already understand the ravines. We already understand the communities. We already understand how to get the metal out of the ground. That is the pre-feasibility. We are reducing aspects as the construction risks, the engineering risks, the mining risks, and the environmental risks. That is why we move forward. In the pre-feasibility stage, and now a major stage for the company is coming. Although we're taking a couple of months to optimize our mining process, optimizing the ideas we have, our next big step is feasibility, where you'll further reduce the risk and you'll be in charge of this great project to take it to a level of risk already close to 1% or close to zero. You are already going to construction. We are essentially in the process of designing. At the smallest detail, the nuts and bolts, you are already designing it. You are doing the construction detail. What for? So that we can then present the environmental study and ask for the pertinent permits, and also importantly, ask for the money to ask for the financing. Of course, you have to ask for the financing.
Great. In this new PFS, there are some views that I would like to discuss and get your internal view on. You are reporting probable reserves of over 500 million tons with 0.37% copper, 0.1 grams of ton of gold, 0.49 grams per ton of silver, and 97 ppm of molybdenum. The plan outlines an average annual production of 116,000 tons of copper equivalent for the first 14 years, a total mine life of 20 years, and a payback period of about 4 years. These are very solid numbers. So how do you internally assess this positioning, and where does it place Hot Chile among the current copper developers?
Look, these numbers are very strong. The numbers you have just given are big numbers, and we are going to explain the industry a little bit. The numbers you are giving are reserve numbers. But let's go to the general numbers so that people understand what is the mine we have. Because you are talking about the numbers for the first 14 years of mine life. But the truth is that the first 14 years of mine life is one thing, but let's talk about what the mine is. The mine has 20 years of mine life, okay? It's 20 years, it's not 14. And the average, let's talk so that all the people understand, of copper equivalent, we are going to say that it is 110,000 tons of copper equivalent for 20 years so that people remember the number. People who like to have this knowledge, a round number, let's say 100,000 tons of fine copper, copper equivalent. When we are talking about copper equivalent, for those who do not know, we are essentially adding to copper the credits of other metals. That is to say, it adds the values that other metals add to copper. In this case, we have gold, molybdenum, and a little bit of silver. Look then, we are going to talk about 100,000, 110,000 tons of copper equivalent for about 20 years. This produces some 2,000 jobs in the construction stage in the Huasco Valley, a mining area, and some in the Huasco Valley, a mining area, and about 800 jobs for 20 years in the production stage. These figures pertain to a sizable mine operation. In Chile, known for having the world's biggest copper mines, the scale is quite different. Thus, in Chile, we are a lion's tail because we are not the largest mines. We are one of the small mines, of the largest mines. But the truth is that if we were, for example, in Spain, if we were in France, if we were in Australia, which is a mining jurisdiction, we would be the largest in those countries. For example, today, 100,000 in Australia, we would be the largest Australian. What happens is that the Australians have many mines that are smaller and of better grade, but they are much smaller. So in Chile, the quantity is big. So these very large mines, well, what is happening today? What we have seen with the big mergers of companies, Glencore, BHP, the big ones that are buying each other. There is, I believe, a terror since the last cycle, since the last mining cycle, particularly in copper, in which there were a lot of big slaps. There were many mistakes where they tried to make new projects, and there were big problems with the capex. There were problems with the projects that were not carried out, and things came out very expensive. Companies went bankrupt. And the big companies today still do not dare to find more copper. So what they are doing is trying to buy more copper. And how do they do that? By trying to buy from their competitors. That's why we've seen a wave of the bigger companies trying to buy from their peers, from the bigger ones. But this doesn't bring a single gram of copper into the system. It's as simple as that. And it doesn't bring copper into the system. The only way to bring copper into the system is to discover more copper. The majors today are not dedicated to discovering more copper. Some have been discovered through brownfield projects, but almost none have greenfield projects. The greenfield projects belong to the juniors. There are very few juniors today. Some juniors have brought in, but there are still very few juniors that have real projects. To me, the only one I believe is us. I believe that Marimaca also has a very solid and credible project, but I also believe that Marimaca is a much smaller project. There are 40,000 tons of fine declared by them. In other words, they are almost a third of us, less than half of us. So it's very difficult to find out where to get more copper. That is why this 100,000 project is very good. We have to remember that Escondida is paying $9 billion for an expansion of 100,000 tons of fine copper. We here in our PFS are saying that it is going to cost us 1.2 billion, 100,000 tons of fine copper. In other words, the same 100,000 tons that is going to cost us 1.2 billion is going to cost Escondida 9 billion. The capital intensity is obviously 9 times greater than Escondida with a project that is already built. In other words, so that you can calculate how expensive it is to bring ore into the system. Well, it's unbelievable, of course. As I was saying, the project is very robust in an area where we have the infrastructure in the coastal mountain range at 800 meters. We in 2016, when we issued the first PFS, we knew we did not have a mining project. We knew we were short. We had 10 years of mine life. We had 60,000 tons of fine copper. We knew we had to double the reserves. Today, we have basically 4 times the reserves of those years, and today we know that we have a very robust project. That is why today we are accelerating and trying to put those 100,000 tons of fine copper into production as soon as possible, because also that fine copper or that equivalent copper is in concentrate. And this concentrate represents some 360,000 tons of concentrate. And if you look today at the TCR charges, which are the refining and processing costs, they are negative. In other words, they are paying you to refine. This has never happened before in history. And why is that happening? Because everybody realized that the refining capacity and smelting capacity was expanded, but unfortunately the concentrate supply capacity was not expanded. So today we have a very strange situation, which is that we have the capacity to process, but in contrast, we do not have the capacity to supply. So that makes the concentrates worth a lot of money, of course, and we have a premium product with a very low level of arsenic, which is a premium concentrate for blending. We have an offtake with Glencore for 60% of our product for the first 8 years, which means we have 40% for us for the first 8 years and 100% free after that. And obviously that's going to help us finance the mine down the road later on. In other words, before going into production, that offtake is going to be worth gold. And that is how we are going to charge it, obviously. Today, we are not willing to touch this issue, but certainly when we have to touch this issue, it is going to be for sure an important part of our financing.
Now, we can jump ahead a bit because you already touched the key issue, the capital required and financing. You mentioned it yourself. We are talking about 1.2 billion in initial capex expenditure, which an internal rate of return close to 20%. If copper and gold prices continue out their uptrend, those numbers could get even better. But that is the reality. Your current market cap is 70 million. So the big question is, how does a 70 million company raise over $1 billion?
Look, we are always asked this question from the outset. What you are saying about the sensitivity we have on copper is very important. What you are saying effectively, the project has an IRR of 20%, but that is calculated as copper at 4.3. If you calculate the spot today, which is 480, that IRR shoots up 29%. The greatest sensitivity we obviously have as a company is the value of copper. Today, the PFS project is calculated with a gold value at $2,300 an ounce. Today, gold is at $3,500. If you put it at a spot price, the value of our project skyrockets. You can't do it at a spot price, and you have to do it at a long-term general consensus. But obviously, this project, at the prices you can expect, these projects skyrocket. On the issue of how I am going to finance with such a low capex, it is obviously a very important task for us in management to increase the value of shares. Today, we are at a low value. We believe that due to a circumstantial issue, there is a fund that was exposed to a problem and has sold a lot of our shares, but we believe that we are going to recover in the short term. Nevertheless, in terms of financing, we have many more options than asking a shareholder for money. In this way, we are currently in the process of looking for a minority shareholder who knows how to operate. We have a royalty, a high amount of royalties for selling the project. We have streaming, we have off-day. That is something that we can use. We have the water business. This business has been a business that has shown deeply interesting market interest. And this has also sparked interest from the communities who have given us all the support by showing us their social license to do this work. In the same way, it has also awakened the interest of other companies, which has worked as a sort of incentive, perverse but a positive incentive. Both the community and the companies are interested because when you say that the business has a social license, the companies are interested because in the end, today, one of the most important issues for all industrial processes is that the community supports you. In order to carry out any mining, water, or industrial operations, social support is essential. With 15 years of experience in Vale, we have established strong social support. The communities have told us, this is what we do not want, Jose Ignacio. We do not want 4 pipelines. We do not want 4 pipes nearby. Choose from 1, 2, or 4 companies. Use just 1 or both. Do not use 10. Get organized.
And this ties into something we will discuss in more detail later, the water project. I believe it opens up entirely new financing opportunities. It gives you the flexibility to create a parallel business that can generate revenue to help to find a mine, while also give you leverage and potential to offer services to other companies that might be interested in that infrastructure.
This gives us the water. We are not water operators. And one of the things that we are very clear about is that this water business gives us a great possibility of financing for the mine. For the mine, we are very clear about that. This opens up a possibility of financing for the mine. It gives us water. It lowers our costs. It may allow you perhaps in the future to live on a small royalty per liter on the water. We can reach up to 4,000 meters of altitude distributing water. We can give water to the communities at the peanuts price, because if you are in the business, we are already involved with the numbers up to here, super involved. And the truth is that industrial and mining clients are talking. Our project is one of the largest, requires around 600 liters per second. You, a small community, requires 2 liters per second. So you are talking about completely disproportionate numbers. So if you need an industrial customer, giving water to a community is nothing. So it's very easy to make the magic equation that everybody wins. You know what I mean?
Honestly, that was one of the things that stood out to me when I looked at the share price chart. You have released a PFS, you have been actively communicating updates, and you have unbelieved the water project, which to me is a tremendous news both for the company and for the region. Yeah, and if you look to the stock performance over the past year, you have lost around 60% of the market value. So it seems like the market hasn't acknowledged the progress.
No, they have not recognized us at all. That is true. We are with a recognition problem that is undeniable. We are trying to work on it. The junior industry as a whole remains uniform, even within the gold sector where prices are currently soaring. Despite gold reaching record highs, the dynamics within the gold junior companies are essentially unchanged. So the truth is that in the industry there is a lot of frustration because the producer is rewarded, but the explorer today is not being rewarded at all. And there is a lot of discussion in the industry why this is happening at all levels in all the exploration industries. It did not happen, look, with lithium. Today it is already happening. Today lithium is already turning around. And the most logical explanation is because of what happened in the last century. And last century, notice that of the 44 juniors that existed in the last century, there are only 4 of us left in the ISX market, right? In other words, the other 40 were liquidated. It was a bad bet if you invested in it. You were left. You lost absolutely all your bet. We think there is a lot of that. However, this is also a business of explorers and developers that is very difficult. That is high risk. It is a business, and I think the people of the juniors have to know this. You know, these are venture capital businesses. They are startups. Here you have to have a lot of balls to invest. Here you cannot put the money of the grandmother who is saving under the bed to live her last year. Here you have to invest what you can in risk. In other words, you have to put that 5% that you think you can invest and that you can lose, because here you can lose. Here you can get an order, especially in Chile, you already have a good jurisdiction. But the countries that do not have healthy jurisdictions or that are not involved in mining, they give you a decree. A country like Panama that happened, that already had a mine built with 400,000 tons of fine copper, and a government said, stopped it. Well, an investment that cost $5 million, $5 billion was stopped and it is over. Then the mining issue is very complex. Also, the investment issue is very complex. It punishes a lot, but it can also pay a lot. Equinox, which we look at very closely, had one, and we would love to follow its example. It had a life that we would like to follow. They went through the same curve that we did, which is called the cripple curve, which is basically that engineering does not bring you a single dollar. Engineering doesn't bring you any money. You are basically losing capital of the shares until you reach the construction phase, where the market sees that you no longer have risk and that you are going to production, to the generation of money. Once you get there, you start to grow. Equinox reached a financial worth of $50 million on the market capitalization, quite similar to us, just slightly inferior in comparison. 3 years later, when it was under construction, it was sold for $9.5 billion. There is high risk here, but there is also high reward. It pays very well when you hit it, but you have to hit it. Yes, we still haven't beaten anybody. That's the truth, but we are working for that.
Rick Rule, who is an investor in Hot Chile, mentioned in an interview that the main challenge he sees is in the lack of a high-grade zone to help accelerate the payback period. He said that he really likes the project, he believes in the team, but the absence of a high grade material early on could be a limiting factor. That brings to me to the discovery that you have been working on, because I think that this might be the missing piece. You are now exploring areas where grades of both copper and gold are higher. That could make a real difference, right?
Hey, look, we would love to have from the beginning, we would love to have a better grade if it is a geological issue. In other words, I would lay a hose and irrigate copper, and I would have a high grade zone to pay so that the payback would be 2 years instead of 4. Certainly, we all strive for geological success and aim to discover a favorable location to explore. That will allow us. The bank loan should be shorter in duration. That would be ideal, but in today's world, with today's laws, we have to do what we can. We must do whatever is within our abilities. You should communicate with the cows that are in your possession. Today, the producer's copper is low, but it is not so low anymore. Every year that goes by, notice that the producer and the Costa Fuego is no longer the grade, it is no longer so low. This 0.46 copper equivalent we have. The week before last, we were at TSXV in Chile at a mining fair, and I went to the exploration forum. Look, from the 5 exploration companies that were exhibited, I was in a financing exhibition. I was not in the exploration committee, but I stayed in the exploration committee. And the 5 that exhibited, who were juniors, who were further back than us, were with much less developed projects. They were just in discoveries, but all discoveries were grades with 0.2, 0.27, 0.25. In other words, the resources are lowering the grades, but very strongly, and that is the next grades to come. In other words, every time Costa Fuego looks better and better. Look, I wish we could find some high-grade zones. Obviously, that would be the discount. We have a high-grade zone on Body 3 at Cortadera. About 1%, however, it is deep for this reason that cannot be at the beginning of the mine's life. The producer, yes, there is high grade, it's oxides, but it's certainly not that much. It would be nice to have more. But what we do have, and this is to answer Rick, who is an investor that we love very much, is that we never stop exploring. We always continue with an exploratory leg. Today, Costa Fuego, stage 1, is going to feasibility. We are advancing in that. But we have a stage 2 that is always our internal DNA. This is something we will never take away from ourselves. We are explorers, and being explorers, we are always a bit restless. We will always be restless. We will always be a little adventurous. We will always be a little undisciplined in that sense, you know what I mean? But disciplinedly undisciplined in our search for metal. And today, what we do have is a project that has not given us a single peso in the market, and that is what you are going to put in your Trovis, which is called La Verde. And I invite you to see it because it is a complete discovery, which does have high grade, and it is very good. A project that is to the south of Costa Fuego with intersections that have given us of a 0.5% grade with 3 grams per ton of gold. We have only drilled RC, that is to say, with your RC, you cannot reach more than 350 meters because the booster or the compressor will not give you more depth. The RC technology, the hammer is not powerful enough. That's why they have to drill with diamonds. Now we are going to send the diamond machine, but basically, we have a giant discovery, which can be an instant alone, that the market alone should already be valuing it twice as much as our entire company. And there you can have some very important high-grade sources. So hopefully we will fulfill Rick Rule's wish, and there we will have some very large high-grade zones, which will feed our Costa Fuego project in the future.
In fact, your CEO, Christian, recently stated in an interview that this new discovery could increase annual production from 100,000 to 150,000 tons of copper and extend the mine life to around 30 years. So it seems like these early results from the field are confirming the high potential, right?
Absolutely. Look, I don't know yet what we don't know what the results are. We have drilling results. This gives us no idea. We have already explored a lot, so we have the profiles of the producer, the profiles of the production company, those of Cortadera, those of San Antonio. We know a lot about the area. We have the footprints. We have the ideas. I am a lawyer by profession. I can give you geological ideas, but with what I already know about geology, I am a hobby geologist. I have already read many books on geology. I love it. I am passionate about it. I am a miner at heart. I am not a miner anymore. And the truth is that with what one already knows about mining, with what one sees in the green, one says, look, this could be big. I compare it. One sees the area, one gets the numbers. I can't tell you the calculations I have in my head, but one more or less takes out the bands, the lengths of the first drill hole, the last one, and one says, wow, this compared to what I have there, well, if there I have so many millions of tons, and here I have this, and I'm still in this. Well, I'm still comparing in dimensions. This can be big, and today I imagine that, of course, and I don't find it difficult to think that there is a quite big body in the green. There are still no resources. We are still in the process. We have to work to bring the resources, not to mention the reserve. These are steps much further. But what we do see is that the body is open. We have not put diamond drillings. In other words, imagine how open it was. I can tell you this freely. And of course, there is a significant extension. It is porphyry. There is rust from practically the surface. There could be something big here.
Now, you have mentioned that your goal is to move into production as soon as possible. You are currently in the pre-feasibility stage and heading up into full feasibility. Will this new De La Verde discovery be incorporated into this facility work, or will it remain a separate initiative for now? Are you running both, maybe in parallel, until there is more definition?
Exactly. It will be seen when the time comes. It will be when the time comes. Today, Costa Fuego is a project that is going to feasibility. The green one is not part of that project. Although we are working on the green one, we have already set up a monitoring station. We are going to make baselines. We would love it to be part of Costa Fuego, stage 2, so to speak. This has to be studied at the right time. This requires a lot of work. Decisions are never easy. They are never quick. Mining times are tectonic. They are geological. This is everything. This is the blooming of a rock. Here, everything takes a long time. Yes, here all the times are geological. But certainly that's an idea. We'd love to have that.
And when do you think that the definite feasibility study will be out?
To have the feasibility ready, I calculate that it should be here in a year and a half, no more or less between 12, 18 months. I calculate that it should already be here. Today we are in an optimization period. Immediately the optimization comes out, we are going to go to the feasibility.
From what you have said, it sounds like you are also exploring the possibility of a joint venture. So, who are you in discussion with? What kind of companies are showing interest? After all, in your shareholder base, you already have Glencore and Osisko, but nearby, geographically and strategically, you have got BHP, Lundin, and Hudbay.
Exactly. I would say that we are talking to everyone. We have a very healthy process led by the Bank of Montreal, in which we have the big mining companies and mining investment funds. We have more than 40 parties currently talking to us in a process that we hope to have ready by mid-year or close by. Mid-year or close to mid-year. And to announce to the market clearly how we continue, what is the restructuring. Today we do not have a clear idea, but we are certainly moving towards that with all the big players and medium-sized players. Seeing what is the final look, we always adhere to our mandate one, always better shareholder return, and that there is a clear path to build the mine.
So, would it be fair to say that during this year, shareholders can expect clarity on how the company will move forward, who the strategic partner might be, and what the development path will look like?
Yes. Of course, in the year of the defined project with income to the environmental system and already looking for financing, looking for project finals.
One last question on the water company. What role is it going to play in all of this? I don't know how far along that initiative is at this point, but it can definitely see that it's either a source of revenue during this phase or something that might still require significant capex to realize. Can you give us a quick overview of how that fits into the overall strategy?
The water company is going, phase 1 of the water company is going, marriage with the copper company. The copper company cannot exist without the water company. They have to go, they are tied together. The PFS are tied together. The PFS of the copper company is put together with the PFS of the water company. And this is because there is no copper company without the water company. The phase 1 of the water company is the only client that the copper company has. And that has to be so because I cannot start producing without water. And that is also the nice thing, that the water company already has an assured client, which is the copper company. Of course, it's clear then This company, which already has the engineering, has everything, and which is going to submit the environmental permit at the same time as the copper company, is going to move forward. Well, yeah, with the copper company, it is self-sustainable with the copper company, but the big catch that it has, or the big claw, the big prize, are all the clients that could have potential. And by potential, we only have to look at the valley, all the clients that are up there. BHP, Lundin, Nueva Unión, all those clients that do not have water, that do not have a maritime concession, that are in Chile and Argentina. And where are they going to get the water from? Because I ask you, where are they going to get the water in GX, Jose Maria? They are going to bring it from the Atlantic. 3,000 kilometers, are they going to build a 3,000 kilometer pipeline, or are they going to build a 150 kilometer pipeline from the coast using our maritime concession? From the Atlantic, that pipeline is unaffordable. The other option they have is to make a well and take water from the mountain range, and that is where I tell them they will not be able to do it because all the Argentines will stop them and tell them they cannot do it. In Chile, it was forbidden. In Chile, it was no longer possible, and this is very nice. And with this, I want to close so as not to alienate everybody in Chile. The water business that gave us, it took us 8 years for the Chilean Navy to give us the maritime concession. This was a business that came out of the joint intelligence of the Chileans and the Australians. It could not have been more an effort of the two nations. And why? Because when in the year 2011, when they asked me to go and buy water from the rivers, I told them, no, gentlemen, we cannot, because the social license in Chile does not allow it. Although the legislation allows it, this is going to be prohibited, and then they are going to sue us, and moreover, we are going to look bad. Everybody is going to tell us that we are assholes, that we are taking water from the valleys, and they are going to punish us. It is going to be ugly. And the director at the time told me, Jose Ignacio, you are wrong. This is the cheapest thing to do. It is the only way to do it. I argued with them. I told them no, that this was something cultural, that they were not understanding me, that they had to give me a budget. Reluctantly, they gave it to me. But they gave it to me. They still listened to me. They told me, you are Chilean, we will give it to you. They gave it to me, and 8 years later, they gave me the maritime concession. The cycle had fallen. We were not really concerned about the infrastructure at that time, but they gave me the maritime concession. Surprised there, we discovered that it was a great asset, and today we have this asset that we are producing. But the board of directors, who was Australian, had the decency and the good idea to tell me, yes, come on. I had a good idea, you are Chilean. Do you know what? Maybe yes, and today we are paying this benefit, which is an idea of all of us. They told me yes, they say that I had a good idea. And look, I know how crazy people are here. After the year of November, the use of continental water was prohibited. Today the idea is super good. And it was because together we took the right quote, and today we are with this ship all together saying, let's sell the water to the others, because if they want, they ask for a maritime concession, it is going to take 5 years. And today having copper pays much more than taking 5 years to ask for a concession, of course then. So it is a great idea that arose in the end together with the Australians, the Chileans, who did not keep quiet, and that is important in the Australian company, important in the company. Especially in the Latin companies, we Latinos are very good at keeping quiet with the Anglo-Saxons and say that to the managers of Latin companies, they cannot keep quiet. They have to speak up. They have to raise their voices to the employees, especially the employees of Latino companies that work with Anglo-Saxons. Do not be quiet. You have to speak up, raise your voice, say things. Do not say yes to everything. Yes, sir. They have to know how to say no. They have to know how to raise their voices. Not because they are spoken to in English, they are going to say yes.
Well, that's a great place to end on a positive and forward-looking note. Jose Ignacio, thank you for your time. I think that we have covered Hot Chile impressive progress over the past year and everything that's on the horizon, from a solid PFS to a promising new discovery to a future that includes production and strategic partnerships. We'll be watching closely and looking forward to speak with you again in the near future.
Perfect. I want to thank you very much for the interview. All the best.
Disclaimer. The content in Charlando de Minas is not an investment advice. Amadeo Bonet and his guests are not investment advisors. The authors may have interest in the companies mentioned in this publication. They may also have bias and not be impartial. The information in this publication and all the others in Charlando de Minas is impersonal by nature and should be considered as an entertainment product. The minimum risk of any investment mentioned in this video is 100% of the capital. Before to make any investment decision, contact to a financial or investment advisor. or someone qualified with experience. These broadcasts are a narrative of my learnings in the world of commodities and mining investment. In this podcast, we will try to bring experts, professionals, and companies. If you like it, please subscribe. I am Abel Bonet. Welcome to Charlando de Minas.